Imagine being sent to kill a president only to be saved by him when you're at your lowest. That's exactly what happened to Natasha, an American spy deployed to Burkina Faso with one mission: assassinate President Ibrahim Traoré. Abandoned and homeless on the streets of Ouagadougou, the very target she was sent to eliminate became her unexpected savior. What unfolds next challenges everything she thought she knew about her mission, her loyalty, and herself. Natasha Reeves landed in Ouagadougou with practiced confidence. Her false passport identified her as a Canadian humanitarian worker, specializing in agricultural development. The forged documents withstood scrutiny at customs, where she handed over her visa with a rehearsed smile. Her cover story was airtight. She represented a small NGO called Green Harvest Solutions, dedicated to sustainable farming practices in West Africa. No one suspected that behind her earnest demeanor and carefully selected wardrobe of practical khakis and sensible hiking boots lay years of specialized training. The agency had selected her for this mission based on her track record of successful operations in Mali and Niger. Her briefing had been clear: infiltrate, assess, and eliminate President Ibrahim Traoré, whose growing popularity and anti-Western stance threatened American interests in the region. Natasha's plan seemed straightforward. She would establish herself within the humanitarian community, gradually build connections with government officials, and eventually secure an invitation to a presidential event. From there, she would deploy one of several assassination methods she'd been trained to execute. The toxin hidden in her necklace pendant required only momentary contact with the target's skin. Her operation hinged on a local contact, a disgruntled former government employee named Marcel, who had agreed to facilitate introductions to key officials. They met at a small cafe 3 days after her arrival, where Marcel assured her that arrangements were proceeding as planned. He collected a substantial payment, promising to return with documentation and access credentials the following day. The next morning, Natasha waited at the designated meeting spot for hours. Marcel never appeared. When she returned to her hotel, the desk clerk informed her that police officers had inquired about her. Her room had been searched. Her emergency cash, backup documents, and communication equipment were gone. Marcel had betrayed her, taking her resources and exposing her cover. Protocol dictated immediate extraction, but her emergency contact channels went unanswered. The agency had disavowed her. Later, she would learn that a political shift back in Washington had rendered her mission inconvenient. She was now a liability, abandoned in a foreign country with a failed cover and dwindling options. Within days, Natasha's situation deteriorated drastically. Her remaining cash covered only a week in progressively cheaper accommodations until she found herself sleeping in an abandoned building on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. Her training had prepared her for many scenarios: torture, pursuit, combat, but not homelessness in a city where she stood out as a foreigner and had no support system. She survived by scavenging food and collecting discarded plastic bottles to sell. Her appearance changed: sunburned skin, dirty clothes, hollow cheeks. The transformation provided a new kind of cover, as people now actively avoided looking at her. Her training in blending in had never anticipated this form of invisibility, not camouflage but social erasure. The third week found her huddled against a wall in the central market area, watching people with homes and purpose move through their daily lives. The contrast between her former confidence and current desperation was stark. Her agency instructors had never covered what to do when the mission infrastructure collapsed completely. It was during one of President Traoré's unscheduled neighborhood visits that their paths crossed. The young president had developed a reputation for these impromptu connections with citizens, a practice that security experts considered dangerous, but which had endeared him to the population. Natasha barely registered the approaching motorcade, too focused on her immediate survival needs. President Traoré, walking among market vendors and speaking with locals, noticed the disheveled foreign woman. Something about her defeated posture caught his attention. Against the protests of his security detail, he approached her directly. "You are far from home," he said in French, then switched to English when he saw recognition in her eyes. "Are you in need of assistance?" Natasha stared up at the man she had been sent to kill. His expression showed genuine concern rather than suspicion. Her training dictated she should view this as an unexpected opportunity to complete her mission. Instead, she felt shame at her current state and confusion at his humanity. The president's security team wanted to detain her for questioning. A foreign national with no clear purpose presented an obvious risk, but Traoré overruled them. Arrange shelter and medical attention, he instructed. This woman needs help, not interrogation. That simple act of compassion created the first crack in Natasha's professional facade. She had studied Traoré extensively in preparation for her mission, memorized his schedule, habits, and security weaknesses. The briefing materials had portrayed him as a dangerous radical, a threat to stability. Nothing had prepared her for the reality of his direct kindness. When offered transportation to a government guest facility, Natasha hesitated. Accepting help from her target violated every principle of her training. Yet the alternative was continued desperation on the streets. With reluctance born of necessity, she allowed herself to be guided into a vehicle, acutely aware of the irony. Her mission to get close to the president had succeeded, but through a path she never anticipated. Not through calculated manipulation, but through his unexpected mercy. Natasha's stay at the presidential facility began as a surveillance opportunity. She was given a modest room in a guest building adjacent to the main residence, allowing her to observe the comings and goings of staff and security personnel. Though technically a guest receiving humanitarian aid, she spent her first days mapping entry points, cataloging security rotations, and identifying potential weaknesses in the presidential protection protocols. Her training kicked in automatically, even as she received medical attention for malnutrition and recovered her strength. The facility staff treated her with unexpected warmth. They provided clean clothes, regular meals, and gradually invited her to participate in communal activities. Natasha maintained her cover story, but used these interactions to gather intelligence. Each conversation was an opportunity to learn more about access to the president, though she noted that security remained vigilant despite the relaxed atmosphere. President Traoré maintained a surprising schedule. He woke before dawn for simple morning exercises with his security team, then worked through breakfast meetings with ministers and advisors. What struck Natasha most was his accessibility. Unlike other heads of state she had studied, Traoré regularly held public forums where citizens brought concerns directly to him. During these sessions, he sat without ceremony, listening intently to farmers, teachers, and village elders. Her agency briefings had portrayed Traoré as a dangerous radical with growing anti-Western sentiment. They described him as manipulative, using populist rhetoric to consolidate power. Yet daily, Natasha witnessed evidence that contradicted this narrative. The president lived modestly, often wearing the same simple military uniform. He ate the same local dishes as his staff and insisted that government resources be directed to public projects rather than official luxuries. One evening, Natasha observed Traoré meeting with local students. Instead of a formal address, he sat cross-legged in a circle with them, discussing their ideas for national improvement. "Our freedom must include economic sovereignty," he told them. "Foreign aid with conditions is just colonialism wearing a new mask." The students nodded in understanding, their expressions showing genuine respect rather than fear. During her third week at the compound, Natasha found a way to access an encrypted communication channel. Her handlers responded immediately with impatience. "Mission timeline has been compromised. Execute priority objective within 72 hours or extraction team will be deployed." The message carried an implicit threat. If she couldn't complete her assignment, the agency would send someone who could, likely eliminating her as a liability. That same evening, President Traoré invited Natasha to join him for dinner. Security procedures would normally prevent such access, but the president had developed a curious interest in the foreign woman he had rescued. Natasha recognized the perfect opportunity to complete her mission. The toxin was still concealed in her necklace pendant. A simple brush against his hand would be enough. As they shared a meal of rice and grilled fish, Traoré spoke about his childhood in a rural village, his military training, and his reluctant entry into politics after the previous government's corruption became unbearable. "I never wanted to be president," he admitted. "I wanted to be a mathematics teacher. But when you see your people suffering while foreign companies extract our wealth, someone must stand." He described his vision for Burkina Faso: education systems not dependent on foreign curricula, healthcare not tied to foreign pharmaceutical interests, and military forces trained to defend national resources rather than corporate assets. The greatest threat to African sovereignty isn't terrorism, he explained. It's the economic warfare waged through unbalanced trade agreements and conditional loans. Natasha's hand moved to her necklace several times during their conversation, but each time she hesitated. The president's words echoed analyses she had seen in classified reports, reports that candidly discussed American interests in maintaining economic leverage over resource-rich African nations. "Do you know why your country abandoned you here?" Traoré asked suddenly, his eyes meeting hers directly. The question froze her. He continued before she could respond. "Because policies changed. Perhaps a new administration, new priorities. Individual agents become expendable when strategies shift. I've seen this pattern with French and American operations across West Africa." Her training prepared her for many scenarios, but not for a target who understood the political machinery behind her mission better than she did. As Traoré spoke about foreign intelligence operations in the region, Natasha realized he knew, or strongly suspected, her true purpose. Yet he had still helped her, still shared a meal with her, still treated her with dignity. That night, ignoring the 72-hour ultimatum from her handlers, Natasha examined the classified background materials stored in her memory. Every justification for Traoré's elimination centered on his resistance to foreign economic control of Burkina Faso's resources. The agency's true client wasn't the American people, but corporate interests threatened by resource nationalism. The next morning, her encrypted channel activated again. "Asset Kingfisher has been deployed to your location. Maintain position and provide support as needed." The message confirmed her suspicion. Another agent was coming to complete what she hadn't. The agency no longer trusted her to execute the mission. Her time was running out, and now she faced a choice that would define not just her mission, but her humanity. Natasha spotted Derek Lane at the market 3 days after receiving the coded message. She recognized him immediately. They had trained together at the agency's Virginia facility 4 years earlier. Derek specialized in technical assassinations, preferring remote triggers and electronic disruptions over close contact methods. His presence in Ouagadougou confirmed her fears. The agency had abandoned subtlety for efficiency. She tracked him from a distance, careful to remain unnoticed. Derek checked into a small hotel near the presidential palace and spent his first day establishing surveillance points around the compound. Natasha observed his methodical approach, the same techniques they had both learned, now deployed against her and President Traoré. That evening, Natasha managed to access Derek's electronic trail through the hotel's unsecured network. His mission brief was more aggressive than hers had been. While she had been instructed to make the assassination appear natural, Derek's orders emphasized completion over subtlety. The time frame was compressed. He planned to act during the president's upcoming village outreach program in Ouagadougou, just 2 days away. The discovery forced Natasha to confront her shifting loyalties. Her training dictated she should assist Derek and complete the mission. The rational part of her mind reminded her that defection meant permanent exile, a life looking over her shoulder. But the past weeks had revealed the gap between her briefing materials and reality. President Traoré wasn't the dangerous radical she had been told to eliminate. He represented something her handlers feared more: African leadership that rejected external control of its resources. Natasha found herself standing at the edge of a moral precipice. Completing her mission meant killing a man working to free his people from economic oppression. Protecting him meant betraying everything she had believed about her purpose as an agent. The decision crystallized in a moment of clarity. She would not be the instrument of neo-colonial interests disguised as national security. With her decision made, Natasha needed information. She knew Derek's methods well enough to anticipate his approach. The village meeting would provide multiple attack vectors: open spaces for drone deployment, crowds for concealment, and limited security infrastructure. Derek would want distance and deniability. She checked satellite imagery of Ouagadougou and identified the most likely positions for remote weapon placement. The day of the village meeting arrived with heavy humidity hanging in the air. President Traoré traveled with a small security team, maintaining his commitment to accessibility despite the risks. Natasha accompanied the delegation in her role as a foreign guest, studying agricultural initiatives. She kept Derek in her peripheral vision as he positioned himself near the water tower overlooking the gathering space. As Traoré began speaking with village elders, Natasha noticed Derek removing what appeared to be a remote controller from his bag. His fingers moved across its surface with practiced precision. Following his sightline, she spotted a small device positioned on a nearby roof, likely a modified drone capable of delivering a lethal payload. Without hesitation, Natasha moved through the crowd toward Derek's position. She maintained a casual pace to avoid drawing attention, closing the distance just as Derek activated the device. In a swift motion, she knocked the controller from his hands and delivered a precise strike to his throat, temporarily immobilizing him. "Security breach! Drone attack!" she shouted, pointing to the device now hovering near the president. The presidential guards immediately formed a protective circle around Traoré and targeted the drone with signal jammers. Derek recovered quickly and attempted to flee, but Natasha pursued him through the village streets. The chase ended when local security forces, alerted by her warning, intercepted and detained him. In the aftermath, President Traoré requested a private meeting with Natasha. His expression showed neither anger nor surprise when she revealed her original mission and identity. "I suspected as much from our first conversation," he said, "but I needed to understand why America wants me dead." "Your economic policies threaten Western interests," Natasha explained. "You've canceled unbalanced mining contracts, redirected resource profits to social programs, and sought partnerships with Russia and China. The agency views your resource nationalism as destabilizing to American influence in the region." Traoré nodded slowly. "Not destabilizing to Africa. Destabilizing to those who have exploited Africa. That is the true reason." Derek's interrogation confirmed Natasha's explanation. The assassination order had originated after Traoré nationalized several foreign-owned gold mines and redirected profits to local development. His growing popularity made him impossible to remove politically, so elimination became the preferred solution. "What happens to you now?" Traoré asked Natasha. "Your government will disavow you. You've become a liability to them." "I made my choice," she replied. "I can't return to my old life." "Then perhaps you could build a new one here," Traoré suggested. "Burkina Faso needs allies who understand how these systems work against us. Your knowledge could help protect our sovereignty." The president's offer represented something Natasha hadn't expected. Not just forgiveness, but purpose. In choosing to protect Traoré, she had inadvertently found her true mission. The skills she had developed to destabilize African nations could now be used to strengthen one. 3 years later, Natasha leads the Youth Peace Initiative in Ouagadougou, working with young Burkinabés to build technical skills and civic awareness. Her intelligence background now serves a different purpose, helping identify and counter foreign interference in Burkina Faso's development. President Traoré's decision to show compassion rather than suspicion transformed both their lives. As he once told her, "You said something before that you were lied to. Then tell me." That simple invitation to truth became the foundation of her new life. In a world where African resources remain targets for exploitation, this unlikely alliance demonstrates how sovereignty can prevail when leadership values human dignity above geopolitical manipulation.